Welcome to the council meeting for the 18th of August 2020, which I now declare open. Although it's not possible for members of the public to join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to those of you who are watching from home. So on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now, councillors, I am just looking at the screen and I haven't received any apologies for tonight. However, I am mindful that Councillor Lawrence may be waiting to rejoin the meeting. If governance could allow Councillor Lawrence to rejoin the meeting, please. Whilst we are waiting for that, we will move to confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 11th of August be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sorais, seconded Councillor Nation. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And I note we have Deputy Mayor Councillor Sypek has joined us, and Councillor Lawrence shouldn't be too far away. In fact, here he is, so we will just wait for him.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Hi, Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, back again.
Beautiful. So we have just opened the meeting and we are up to agenda item 5, which is the declarations of conflict of interest. Now, councillors, does any councillor wish to declare a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda tonight? No.
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor. It's on the
Councillor Lawrence, we're just doing this for the open council meeting, not for the strategic briefing. This is just for the dog park item.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. If people at home are wondering what's going on, we've just come out of a public forum. We've now got this meeting and we've got a strategic briefing to go into afterwards. So we have to follow the meeting procedures for all of them. So it can, we're in and out a little bit. But this is just for this meeting. So no conflicts of interest for this council meeting. No. Okay. Councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? No petitions or joint letters. Public question time, and we don't have any public question times because we have just come from a public forum, and we don't have any reports from special committees, so we'll move on to the report for tonight, which is titled Local Parks Grants Program Dog Parks. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sorais.
I'd like to move that Council resolves to A, note the results of the community consultation in relation to 2 possible fully fenced off leash dog parks in the Niddrie/Essendon West neighbourhood, and B, apply for Local Parks Program Dog Park Funding Round 2 for the site Cliff Whitworth Reserve in Essendon West for construction of a fully fenced off dog leash park, leash dog park.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Sorais' motion? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sorais, would you like to speak on the motion?
I will, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just give a bit of background information as to why we're why this is on for tonight's agenda, and a bit of background as to where we're at to here. The state government has a $50 million local parks program, including funding for dog parks. Ahead of the state election, a commitment was made for 1 dog park in the Moonee Valley municipality. No submission was made in 2019 for dog park round 1. Round 2 of the local parks dog program, or dog parks, is now open for submissions. Council can nominate 2 parks, and new spaces are preferred, but improvements to existing dog off-leash spaces will be considered. Officers have reviewed a number of options for dog parks that were discussed with councillors. I'll just go over the 3 that were discussed. So we had Aberfeldy Park, which is planned as a dog off-leash but not fenced. The only space large enough to accommodate a fenced area is the sandy area in the northeast. Poor soils prohibit much vegetation growth, and other activities are proposed in this space in the master plan. The dog park would therefore only be temporary use. The second one was Rosehill Easement. This is a narrow strip of land with a pathway and would require gates to be installed at the two ends of the pathway. In the case of pedestrians or cyclists afraid of dogs, it could deter them from using the path at all. In addition, residents have gates opening onto the reserve, and there would be a risk of dogs getting into a private residence as people used their gateways. And then there's Essendon West, which has been identified in earlier feasibility studies, identifying multiple local parks as being suitable, including Cliff Whitworth Reserve, which is a 0.26 hectare site, and the Ian J. McWilliams Park, which is a 0.34 hectare site. These parks are in a location that would be accessible to the suburbs with the highest number of dog registrations. As such, this was the preferred option rather than Rosehill Easement or Aberfeldy Park. Community consultation was undertaken from Friday the 24th of July to Friday the 7th of August to understand whether there would be support for either Cliff Whitworth Reserve or Ian J. McWilliams Park in Essendon West being converted into a fenced dog park. Just some of the community feedback results. In response to the statistics, this was a significant amount of interest in looking at the online survey, and just over 12% of people who viewed the proposed responded to the survey, which is detailed as follows. 881 total visits to Council's Your Say page, 777 different people looked at the survey, 309 people downloaded the attached information to view on Your Say page, 97 survey responses via the Your Say page, 6 written submissions were received via Council's Park Improvements email address. 30% of the Your Say visits were a result of a social media post on Council's Facebook page. A significant amount of respondents indicated they would walk to the dog park, with 50% more people walking to the site than driving. And out of that, where one of the questions was, how would you travel to the dog park? 64% that they would walk there. And an overall of a total of 103 responses were received, which was made up of the following: 83 support, or 81%, and 20 not supporting, or 19%. Further site responses indicated with the Cliff Whitworth Reserve that 45 were extremely supportive, and of the Ian McWilliams Park, 38 were supportive. The general positive comments that came back were that general support for a new fully fenced off-leash dog park in Essendon West, comments about the need for more areas to exercise dogs safely, particularly smaller dogs, comments about having a more local option closer to home is favourable, and it will reduce the need to drive to other suburbs and municipalities for fenced dog park facilities. Close to home was repeatedly mentioned, with comments about wanting to walk to a local option, comments about how it will encourage a healthy lifestyle for the whole family, how it will be great for exercise and socialising, how it would take some pressure off existing mixed-use park, and about how the spaces would encourage local owners to exercise their dogs off-lead legally in a permitted area. In regards to the comparison of the two sites, as for the Cliff Whitworth Reserve, comments about lots of parking access. The site is a great location with 2 frontages. It is a large area and will be a great use of an underutilised space. It includes varied terrain and a good outlook over the creek. And the Cliff Whitworth Reserve is already used by people with their dogs who do not clean up after their dogs. And that happens everywhere. And we've seen a lot of that these days with people walking their dogs in the local streets. So it will need to be maintained to ensure this is done with a greater volume of dog use. In the results, there is overall support for a dog park in Essendon West, supported by 81% of all respondents and 63% of local respondents. Out of the two reserves, suggestions for a dog park, there was broad support for either reserve to be chosen, with a slightly higher community preference for the Cliff Whitworth Reserve. The reasons for those choices are that the Cliff Whitworth Reserve is a better site, as it has 2 roadside frontages that will allow for separate gates on different sides of the park. This challenging topography on site will provide opportunities to create an interesting outcome with terracing, seating, walls, rock work for necessary retaining walls, and the site allows for a separate lower space for small elderly dogs as requested in the feedback. So as there is no identified capital budget for dog parks in the current budget, it is proposed that the grant application state where there will be no financial contribution from council, but rather in-kind support in planning and project management. The full $275,000 should be applied for to cover design and construction costs. So I would hope that my fellow councillors will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorais. I've just had a question come through from governance. They just wanted to confirm that you moved the officer's recommendation.
Yes, I did. And I read it out for those who may not have a copy of the agenda that might be watching live stream.
No, I think they assumed that was the case, just double checking there wasn't,
No worries.
in case there was some audio hiccups. So it was the officer's recommendation.
Correct.
Now, Councillor Cam Nation seconded it. However, I did notice that there was an extra somebody with Councillor Nation at the moment. So I'm not sure who's speaking here. No, I will throw to Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. So, and thank you very much to Councillor Sorais for that comprehensive analysis of why we're here and hopefully what we're deciding on. I just also want to make note that this is a state government program, and we are very appreciative when the state government's willing to consider funding projects in local government areas. So if we can, especially at present when there's a stress on council finances, if we can get some investment, be it co-investments or outright investment, very much appreciated. Dog parks, we've got obviously one in the municipality at Elf Pierce, and it's something that almost has unanimous community love. It's is a very utilised park, obviously not during the current restrictions, but before we went into stage 3, it's a place where people from around the area, but also from a little bit further out, come and bring their dog. And it's a great place for people to connect with one another, particularly people who live by themselves. And if this pandemic has shown anything, it's that mental health issues are going to be at the forefront during the recovery phase from this pandemic. So anything that helps, particularly those people that are isolated, come together with their animals, with their pets. You'll see this is my gorgeous girl, Jewel, who actually can't use a dog park. She's a greyhound, but that's another story. We need to get a slipping track. I'm sure Jim would support me to get a slipping track as well. But it's definitely a great project. So hopefully we get the funding. It should also be noted that this is a really good look at how we utilise, and I'll use the word dead open space. So initially, when I looked at this particular site, I thought this wouldn't really be suited for a dog park because of the angle of the terrain. But then when it's considered, rather than it just being a power line easement that is underutilised, the actual incline is manageable with dog parks. It'll actually hopefully make the terrain a little bit more interesting for the dogs. And it's a good way for us it's a good example of how we as a council can look at different spaces and how they can be used. And there's plenty of power line easements and other easements throughout a municipality that may be underutilised, and in the future we can look to. So I'm more than happy to support this motion. Jules more than happy to support this motion as well, even though she doesn't get to use the dog park. And hopefully other councillors will support this. We'll get the application in. I think it's due probably tomorrow. And then hopefully it's good news that we hear back from the state government. Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, no problems, Councillor Nation. Just to confirm, you get to vote, but Jill doesn't get to vote in this case either. Now, would anyone else like to speak on this item? No, in that case, I will put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Oops. Okay. Apologies. Oops. Apologies, councillors. I won't be a moment. Report. Okay. Now, we don't have any notices of motion on tonight's agenda. However, I do believe there may be some urgent business. Councillors, is there some urgent business for tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have an item of urgent business that I would like to present. Should I say what it relates to?
Yes, because we'll need to vote to consider it to be urgent first.
Yeah, it relates to the construction of bike jumps and tracks that have been constructed during the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And can I please have someone to second that it be considered urgent? Councillor Gauci-Marici. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak on why it should be considered urgent?
This matter, it needs to be considered urgently because there's been a number of bike tracks constructed throughout our municipality in different areas. Some of those areas are in sensitive parklands. The one I'm particularly focusing on tonight is at Aberfeldy Park, which isn't in a sensitive parkland area, but a statement's been made by council that we're going to be pulling out all of the bike jumps and tracks that have been constructed by children, the majority of them by children throughout this pandemic and the lockdown period. This motion is urgent because we need to address this issue. It's of high priority. Our kids are really struggling, and I want to be able to put out a statement to at least let the people know, our residents know, what our intentions are with these, with Aberfeldy Park in particular, but with the bike jumps and tracks that have been constructed.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Gauci-Marici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly, I'm sure we'll talk to it more if it is agreed as an urgent item. There are numerous instances locally where the tracks have been created, pulled down, and I would like us to be able to come to a resolution on at least one so that some of the other tracks can at least stop being created every time another's taken down. So.
Thank you, Councillor Gauci-Marici. Would any other councillor like to speak on this being considered as urgent? No, so I'll put it to the vote that it be considered as urgent. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Now, Councillor Sharp, would you like to move your substantive motion? Thank you.
Thank you, yes. So my motion is point 1, request that the CEO allows for the bike jumps located in the northeastern corner of Aberfeldy Park to remain whilst we are in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And point 2, request that the Aberfeldy Park Master Plan be reviewed, if required, by the 31st of December 2020 in relation to this northeastern corner of the site, previously earmarked for a wetland, so that other community uses for this area of parkland can be investigated, including but not limited to a permanent BMX track and an extension to the sporting fields currently on site, namely cricket and soccer.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And do I have a seconder, Councillor Gauci-Marici? Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. My motion tonight refers to the bike jumps that have been constructed by children during this coronavirus pandemic, and I'm really focusing tonight on the jumps that have been constructed at Aberfeldy Park. There are a few things that I need to cover, so I may need extra time, Madam Mayor, but hopefully I will get through it. Firstly, I think we have probably all received calls and emails about the various bike tracks and bike jumps that have been constructed throughout our municipality. I will note that many of these locations are actually in Buckley Ward, and a number of these areas are on very sensitive sites, such as the Afton Street Conservation Park, Napier Park, and along the Moonee Ponds Creek. Clearly, there is a need for more outdoor activities for our kids, particularly during these very difficult lockdown periods. I have young children, and I certainly know how difficult it is for them at the moment. So I'm asking that the jumps at Aberfeldy Park be left as it is for the time being. I have chosen this site because it is away from residential houses and is not in a sensitive area of parkland, which has protected flora and fauna. I'm very concerned with the areas of Napier Park, Afton Street Conservation Reserve, and along the Moonee Ponds Creek, as much of the vegetation in these areas are sensitive and is protected. I note that I've also received feedback on other locations where tracks have been constructed, such as along Glenbervie Station and 5 Mile Creek, but they're just a couple of other ones. So I'd like to think that we as a council are listening to our community. These types of activities are needed, but obviously it must be in the right location. I believe Aberfeldy Park is the right location in the interim, but obviously I guess let's not be the fun police at this very difficult time. So regarding Aberfeldy Park and point 2, we all know our grounds and open spaces are very much loved by our community. The community needs access to these spaces. Hence, my part 2 of the motion refers to re-looking at the master plan to enable greater community use of this part of the parkland. Understanding that it is a floodplain and has been earmarked for a wetland, I think we can achieve something which has a greater community benefit. So I hope that is all pretty self-explanatory and hope that councillors can support that.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Gachmarici.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Sharp has spoken fairly comprehensively, but many will know that there has been a long recent history, at least around BMX tracks and jumps in the area since the Fanny Reserve proposal wasn't followed through. So certainly in the last 2 years, we've had a number of contacts from local residents who have wanted to create tracks or have created tracks and have had them taken down. And we really understand that there is a significant balance on this. Obviously, the tracks that have been created in areas like Afton Street and Napier Park, the reserve at the back of Glenbervie, do some significant damage to areas that we are trying to conserve. The Napier Park one, for example, cost us $10,000 just to rectify the damage that was done. So my hope is that we can genuinely work with the kids that are putting in so much time and effort to give them a space where they can leave the one track that will be set up to stop doing in areas that they potentially shouldn't. And certainly even since we've had the conversation the last few days, a number of people have come forward with particular skills and expertise in this area that have offered to provide support and assistance to council in doing the master planning and working with the kids to scope those ideas out. And I think this is a nice way for us to be able to recognise the significant time and effort that the kids are putting into these sites, but also reduce the impact on other sites that are less appropriate. And the part 2, I think, is a really nice way for us to move forward something that we've been talking about. It was talked about in one of the 12-month action plans. It was talked about after the petition, and it's a nice way for us to move that actually forward as an outcome. So I'm pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Gachmarici. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is a good initiative and one that's desperately needed. As a regular walker at Aberfeldy Park, these dirt mounds and jumps are used every day. I go past there and I just see kids going crazy over, you know, doing all sorts of jumps and activities that go with that type of facility. I think it was fortuitous that I think council probably dumped a bit of their excess dirt there at some stage, and it's just been converted by the children and teenagers into this BMX type bike area. I also note that the park on the eastern side, which is quite steep, is also used and dug up by the children, and maybe this will deter them a little bit, and with some authorization, so we say that they can go hell for leather over these mounds and dirt hills that exist already in the northern side of the park. So hopefully that will be a good thing, and I commend Councillor Sharp on this initiative, and it's certainly one that we need to be mindful of. There are other parks in the municipality that I see where Clarinda Park, there's mounds there everywhere. It's look like molehills there. There's so many of them, and we just need to try and. I mean, it's great that children are out there. I don't actually think it's a bad thing that they're not on their iPads and whatever. You know, they're actually in the fresh air. They're doing activity, and I think it's a great thing. And it was a sort of activity that I would have enjoyed when I was a young teenager and the like. So good on them for getting out there and having a go. If they would be a little bit more careful in not wrecking some of those more sensitive areas of our municipality around the creeks, it would be great. So yeah, look, I commend this and would wholly and solely support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak in support of the motion too, and it's really brought to the fore this lack of the lack of facilities that we have for kids of this age. Excuse me, and with this particular interest, we do have a plan to have, I suppose, a strategic view of this and to actually be, you know, considered in the way that we do it, and that's incredibly important. I would hope that after that planning is done, so we identify appropriate sites, that in each ward there would be at least one of these types of facilities. We certainly have in the southern part of Moonee Valley and also in the central part, really small block sizes at times. So that thing that we did as kids, which was, you know, you ride around in your backyard or you ride out on the streets, that doesn't happen like it did. And so we need to be trying to both encourage safe riding on the streets, and we can do that in a range of ways, but also to be able to provide these types of facilities for kids. And we do have limited spaces, so we need to make sure that we use those in a way that's clever and sensible, and that is a multi-use option, and that is just the reality. So to be able to plan it and to do it in the appropriate spots so that we don't have the situation where they're being, you know, trees are being damaged and things like that, because I'm sure, like other councillors, I've had both sides of the coin, people complaining about the BMX and the ramps that are being created, and then people saying that they want them. So that's all we need to be planned in the way that we do it. So hopefully that planning is done sooner rather than later, because we don't know, you know, with COVID-19, it's very difficult to project how this is all going to play out, but you can certainly see probably a lack of planned activities for some time. And so kids will need to burn off the energy, and parents, for our sanity, will need our kids to burn off energy. So I'm certainly supportive of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Yep. Oh, sorry. I think I saw Councillor Cusack first.
I wasn't wanting to make a race of it. Just to obviously support the motion. I think it's very worthwhile, and thank you for bringing it to us, Councillor Sharp. It does, as Councillor Marshall said, brings into stark relief the critical shortage of options that we have for young people who are in that pre-teen and early teenage years. It's also an important issue, as Councillor Lawrence has pointed out, that we provide an opportunity for these young people to do something that's an alternative. But most importantly, it's about listening to them. And I think that this motion actually throws that up. We've got and while we're also in the process of saying to people, don't go into other areas, I think there's a requirement for council to actually explain to our young people and youth about why they shouldn't be going into those other areas. And so rather than sort of sticking up a sign that sort of says, no riding of bikes around here, which would have been a red rag to a bull for me as a kid, go straight in, you might actually try and explain that, you know, there's sensitive blah, blah, blahs. Our neck of the woods is really copying a bit of this too. And I've had to recently Canterbury Stables, which would be about one of the most inappropriate places to do it, has been used. So there are real difficulties, and maybe one of the little things that could also be done is more information online about places that people could go to. Certainly, there's the back of the Flemington Hub, that area, possibly at Wingate, where there's the skate ramp, although it's pretty cruddy and in shocking condition most of the time, and for people to get down to Fanny Reserve, which is about the only other informal one that's around Moonee Ponds area that people could get to on that side. And Fanny has sort of been like that for a long, long time. So, and I noticed the other day when I was up that way, there were a lot of kids there too. It's important that we be able to, for the sanity of our young people and their mental health, and be able to provide an opportunity for them to do something in this crisis. The other part of that, of course, is people will be saying, well, you know, they need to be self-isolating and all the rest of it, and I agree with that. But it's the young people can also find a way to be smart about that themselves as well, and we should be encouraging that sort of idea and capacity on our information that's going out to them as well, so that they can make decisions that are profound for them in this time of crisis. Good, good motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Councillor Nation?
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to speak in support of this motion. And I think it definitely highlights the importance of thinking about recreation for youths as more than just kicking a footy or playing for the football team or playing for the netball team. You know, our sphere of different recreational pursuits that kids throughout the municipality are involved in range from not just team sports but individual sports. And this BMX or mountain biking is a great example of, in non-pandemic times, an activity where kids can come together, can connect, can be active, have a bit of fun outside of the structured team sports. And I think we need to place a decent emphasis on those other recreational options, not just footy ovals and pavilions. So making sure we use this as a catalyst to look at where potential tracks could go, and then other options as to what other recreational options can we provide to kids once we move out of the pandemic. And I think in regards to certain areas at the moment being dug up or ruined, and as one of my fellow councillors, I can't remember who, mentioned that we probably have all been contacted at some stage over the past few months. The key with making sure that things are looked after, particularly with youths, is giving them a bit of ownership. So if there is a set place where they can go and ride the BMX or do their mountain biking, that's their space, then they will look after it. And I think that at the moment, it's just using whatever they can, wherever they can at the moment. So Great motion, Councillor Sharp. Let's use this as a bit of a catalyst to see how we can provide other recreational opportunities for kids throughout the municipality. There is a lack of things like half courts and for basketball and a whole other range of informal or unorganised recreation that we really need to look at. So yeah, more than happy to support this as urgent business, and obviously just with the caveat that we don't want kids out there riding now. Wait until the specific restrictions are over before you go out and ride anymore.
Thanks, Councillor Nation. They do get their 60 minutes of exercise though. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Now, councillors, do I have any other items of urgent business tonight? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move an item of urgent business pertaining to giving some further clarification regarding the individual artist COVID grant stream.
Thank you. And you would like to move that it be considered
Considered
urgent?
as an item of urgent business, yeah.
Yep. And that's seconded by Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak on why it needs to be considered urgent?
So very simply speaking to why it's urgent, this current grant stream closes next week, and therefore it is essential that we get this clarification, confirm this the specifics of this grant stream tonight to ensure applicants have enough time to submit it by the deadline next week.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Marshall, on why it's to be considered urgent.
Sorry, I'm just freezing. I'm just trying to work out if it's frozen. No, can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
Oh no, maybe you are freezing a little bit.
Sorry. Look, the council is not resolved. Okay. So if this isn't resolved tonight, then the time frame in which it will be useful will be passed, because as Councillor Nation's indicated, those grant applications close shortly. So it needs to be resolved tonight, and I'd certainly say this has been very clearly urgent business.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would anyone else like to speak on whether this item be considered urgent? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Nation, would you like to move your business?
Thank you, Mayor. So I move that Council remove the requirement of having to hold public liability insurance for applicants of individual artist grants under the current grants round for projects that can be completed at home, as well as removing the need for these applicants to contact the Community Grants Officer and then attach this correspondence to the application. To ensure there is no confusion, page 15 of the online grants form is to be updated to include a field, not required, individual artist completing project at home, under, do you have public liability insurance cover? Subsequently, uploading a certificate will no longer be a required field. This change is to be updated on the application form by close of business Wednesday, 19th of August 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. And do I have a seconder for Councillor Nation's motion? Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of months ago, 2 months ago, when Council moved the Fair Action Plan, that motion included in it reference to a specific grant stream for individual artists, noting that a lot of our COVID recovery grants were for organisations and businesses, two very worthy recipients. But at the time, and I noted in my comments at that meeting, individual artists or people throughout individuals throughout a municipality that are involved in the creative sector were sort of falling through, well, not sort of, they were falling through the gaps. A lot weren't eligible for JobKeeper. Also, a lot of the funding support, both state and federal, so through Creative Victoria, and the Arts Council of Australia, looked at people who'd been professional artists for 5+ years. So that sort of individual that's in the creative sector that's creating and providing such an important contribution to our city, possibly due to financial situations, maybe putting that creative pursuit on the side or giving up that creative pursuit just to survive, basically. So the addition of an individual artist grant stream was about, giving them a little bit of a leg up, and ultimately making sure that they just keep creating during this time. One, because it's good for the municipality, because we really value our art sector, but two, good for their mental health as well. People who have creative pursuits often use them as a form of relaxation, a form of really expressing themselves and enjoying. So the addition of that individual artist grant stream made so much sense. So that gets us to now, and that individual artists grant stream has been included in the current grants round. It's picked up the points that were part of the motion, not requiring an ABN or to be a sole trader or to be auspiced by an organisation, things that would previously exclude a lot of those individuals we were trying to target. However, the current setup requires them to have public liability insurance. And we know if you're someone who is involved in the creative sector, you might be doing it part-time, juggling it with casual work. You're not going to be a holder of public liability insurance. And for you during this time, this current grant round's open for 2-3 weeks. For you to actually go and try to get public liability insurance, or even know the first thing about how to get it, how you're going to get covered, and pay up front for it, sort of completely turns off the people we're trying to target. So the advice we've had is that if you are creating in your home, you're not out in public, you're not engaging externals, then you don't need to have public liability insurance. The process at the moment was applicants still had to email our community grants officer, who then had to make a decision if that was okay, and then they had to upload that information and that communication as a PDF to the grant application. So this is just making it easier for our community grants officer, making it easier for our individual applicants, will help us get money to the people that we want to support, and hopefully when they get to page 15 of the 16-page application, they're not suddenly confronted with, oh, I don't have public liability insurance, I'm not going to proceed with this application. So councillors, this is just providing clarity for this particular item. It's consistent with officer advice. This is such an important grant stream, and the arts is such a valued part of our municipality. The more we can encourage individuals to keep creating, the better. So I ask that you please just support this motion to provide that specific clarity in regards to public liability insurance as part of our individual artist grant stream. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Marshall.
I am happy to support this, given I would consider it very much a red tape reduction measure, which is good, but people are often surprised when they know what my day job is that I speak out against the requirement to have public liability insurance in various situations related to our grant schemes. But there are times when the risk that you're seeking to have someone insure, the risk of something actually happening, is just not in any way proportionate with the burden that comes with having to maintain public liability insurance. And this is one of those situations. So I'm very happy to support it. I think it's incredibly sensible, Councillor Nation. And it is just, if we have that requirement in there, it will be an incredible disincentive to people who may already be struggling to apply, and totally contrary to our intention with these grants. So I think it's sensible, and I'm very happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No, Councillor Cusack.
I'd just like to give a nod to Councillor Nation for bringing this one forward. The whole idea behind the grants is to keep people's heads above water, and and to also look towards the future, and getting through COVID-19 is different for all sorts of people. And it's fascinating that the mainstream of federal government and state government, as much as local government, have all struggled with how they are to support the arts world. And then somehow the artists who are supposed to kind of do it themselves, it falls into that notions of yesteryear that because somebody's a musician, well, just play. I mean, I don't need to pay you for it, do I? All that sort of stuff. And so so therefore, if artists are at home creating, working on their own, or maybe collaborating over the internet or whatever, or preparing or developing something for the future, I think we should be there at the forefront supporting them, rather than, as Councillor Nations pointed out, you get to page 15 and trip over a piece of paper that you just can't possibly, or don't need, or haven't produced in your own life before. And so I kind of think that we're being overly cautious, as I've said on many, many occasions, about how our grants are provided, and that our grants should be a stimulus always, and not and an opportunity for people to contribute to our community, not something that is offered as a carrot but then becomes a hurdle too big to jump.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No? Oh, no? No. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Now, councillors, are there any other items of urgent business for tonight? No? Just two for the night. Great. Well, that actually concludes our meeting for tonight. So thank you for everyone who streamed in, probably to check out the dog park situation, but you've got an extra couple of items as well. So we will see you back again next week for our ordinary meeting of council. See you then.